Okay.
Let's get right. Hi,
Hello.
Haley. How are you?
Excited for this conversation.
Yeah, you have a new haircut.
I do.
It
We
looks
can talk
it
about
looks
that later.
it looks great. So
Thank you very much.
it's my pleasure to introduce you to Anne Marie Zenzel, who is a coach, mostly with women who are struggling with their sexuality. She's a mother, uh, and has a wife. At one time, had a husband, and so she came out, and we're going to talk about the coming out process with her, and that's why she had me on her podcast. But got her divinity degree in her 40s, which I think is wonderful. And I think you also do some hospital work. Am I right,
I
Emily?
did in the past. Yeah, I was a hospice and hospital chaplain for about 14 years.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, but I don't do that anymore.
No. Okay. So welcome to our podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Haley and Brian. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm really curious. I don't know much about your podcast. So can you tell me a little bit about what you talk about?
So the podcast originated from a conversation Brian and I were having, and I noticed a bridge between coming out and straight people on their spiritual journey. And in my conversations with friends that had come out or that were in the process of coming out, it was very similar to my journey of the spiritual journey. And so I was like, we're talking about almost the same thing here, but why do more people come out of the closet than they do from a spiritual perspective? So I kind of said, like, I think that maybe there's a superpower there. I think people coming out of the closet have a superpower where somehow they can tap into that energy that's required to maintain and motivate that spiritual journey. Because I think at the end of the day, it is a spiritual journey. It is a journey of knowing thyself and having the courage to be who you truly feel you are. So Brian at that time was sort of the most prominent gay person that I knew. And I was like, Brian, we don't know each other really well, but I have this idea. And could you give me more information? Am I like barking up the wrong tree here? Or do you see a similarity too? And he was like, I see a similarity. Let's chat about this. So that's how it started. And it's sort of, my hope for this call is to always bring it back to the humanity, to bring it back that we are light and we are energy. It's just our experience that is a little bit different. And even though it is more focused, I would say, on sort of the coming out journey, for me, every single conversation still has similarities where me as a straight person, I can sit here and be like, I can totally relate. I had similar experiences. And I think for me, that sort of helps bring the humanity in, that this isn't a label. This isn't just one person or one group of people. It's all of us that experience these similar processes, just in our own perspective.
Correct.
Emily, how does that fit into your life experience and the work you're doing?
It's 100% accurate. For some people, it's just coming out, like it really is, they're not. It's just that's not their journey. But what I say to most of the women I work with, and this is the type of women I generally attract, that it can become an enormous spiritual awakening. It is about reframing everything you thought about you knew about the world, and um, and uh, uh, and figuring out your place in it. I always talk about my lens shifting, like my lens shifted when I came out. And I also think it's perfectly appropriate too, because, it's midlife. So midlife I define as 35 to 65. And so the task of midlife is to decide whether everything you've told fits you and is true to you, or do you need to redefine some of the things you know? And so the women I work with, typically it's a bell curve, but typically they're between 35 and 65. So it's also developmentally appropriate for people to start questioning. So for the women I work with, for myself, it was about my queerness. But like you, Haley, it was obviously about something else.
Right.
It's something else that started you up the journey. And that is the task of midlife. And now I'm 60 now. So now my task is my legacy.
Yeah.
but
That,
at 42, when I started all this stuff, it was just different.
well, our legacy starts, I think, right off the bat. I think, I hear from friends from grade school, kindergarten, who talk about how I impacted their life. And me. I think that, we have a legacy immediately. Everything we touch and talk to and feel and taste, we change and they change us. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I have one question. You're 60 and it's midlife. Do you really expect to be 120?
No. My point is that I mentioned midlife as being like between 35 and 65. And, I don't think people are going to live to be 130 or anything like that. It just takes some people longer. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's okay.
And Anne Marie, before I urge Haley to jump in, Haley and I just started having a conversation. A friend of ours put us in touch. We had a conversation. Haley said, "You want to do this again next week?" And so we did. And then I said, "Well, why don't we record this? I think what we're saying might be of interest to people." Mm-hmm. And so we just, we just created it, and we didn't care how many people checked in. I told Haley the story of "Are You Happy Without the Movie?" I don't know if I told you that one, Anne Marie. I had a guy tell me that he had to be on Oprah or his life had no meaning. He had to be on Oprah, and so I said, "Okay, let's be in the green room, right?" And you're watching Oprah on the monitor, and you're next, and you get all excited because people told you that what crazy things are going to happen. They're going to ask you to write your life story, and your life story becomes a script, and the script becomes a movie, and you win the Oscar, and you're walking down to get the award. You're about to take it, and the technician walks in and says, "I'm sorry, Oprah ran over. We're going to have to reschedule you." So the question is, are you happy without the movie? Do you have to have a movie made about you in order for you to be happy? What is it that makes us happy? And do we keep moving the line, or can we say, "I have enough"?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And by the way, I've been in Oprah magazine, so
Yeah.
So I've achieved that one.
Good.
So do I make? No, absolutely not. I don't expect a movie to be made. I don't want to. If it happens, great, but that's not my life's purpose. What's really interesting, having lived a heteronormative life for the majority of my life, and doing everything that was supposed to make, I checked all the boxes. I literally checked all the boxes. I had a husband, we had a good relationship, I had 4 kids, we lived in a beautiful town, I had a big house, I had a career. I mean, I went down that list and checked those boxes. But I was really restless and unsatisfied, and I couldn't figure it out. So go forward 10 years later, and I live with my wife. We have 2 puppies. I see my kids, as a normal mom with 2 kids, with 4 kids in their 20s and 30s, see them regularly, but they have their own lives, and that's something I always wanted for them. And I realized like how satisfied I am with my life. I'm like, it's not a big showy life. It's not the life that I was told was going to make me happy, but I'm very satisfied with my life, and very satisfied with the things I've accomplished. So I'm good.
I think that's very interesting you bring up the word satisfied, because that resonates with me. And sort of, as Brian was saying, we need to move the goalposts and set in terms of what is success. And I feel like the more that I've sort of got more comfortable with myself and surrendered into, okay, this is the life that you have, and are you happy with it? Satisfaction is greater, but I need less. So it's almost like the goalpost just disappears. Those posts disappear, and it's just like, I'm satisfied. And I think if we were to ask sort of motivational speakers and success speakers out there, be like, I'm satisfied, they'd be like, come on, you got to get going. Satisfaction is stagnant.
Haley, did you and Anne Marie both start coaching at the same time? Haley was on Wall Street, and she just decided this is not for me.
Pretty much
And
very similar to your story, like checked all the boxes on this is a perfect life. What's wrong with you? So I've been doing my work for since 2016. I don't know how many years, but it was 4, 5, no more.
2016,
Mhm. Eight. 8 years.
Yeah, well, I came out in 2016 and I started working with the community in 2018. So I've been doing this for 6 years now. So yeah.
But
But
that point of satisfaction, and is there fear that satisfaction becomes comfortable and that you lose your motivation to keep growing? Or is that just a definition? Reframe.
well, we never stop growing. Like we never stop growing. I mean, really, honestly, I wish I was done. But the reality, I wish I was done. I wish I was like baked.
yeah.
But not really baked, but you know what I mean. But I really wish that, like, oh God, do I have another thing to learn? Oh my goodness, do I have something else to work out? Oh my God, I visited my childhood 10 times with so many different therapists and everything like that. Do I have to talk about this again? So I don't think we ever stop growing, but you can be satisfied with your life and continue to grow.
Yeah.
And be open to growth.
Yeah, open to.
What I say is, I say yes to the universe. I'm content. Not once in my entire career did I plan anything. And I didn't scheme. I didn't hire people to make me a public figure. I just kept saying yes to invitations. And with my memoir written and coming out this year, Anne Marie, part of me feels I'm baked too. And I'm the perfect chocolate chip cookie. And I sort of feel like enough, is that not enough? And then I think, you know what? Other stuff is going to come along and you're going to say yes to it. And it may not be gay. I'm doing something on Haiti right now, which I love. Just, copy editing some stuff for the website. But, I'm totally satisfied with my life and have no regrets whatsoever about what I did or what was done to me.
Well, as somebody who experienced restlessness for the majority of my life, it is nice to be satisfied because I was incredibly restless and couldn't figure it out. Typically, the women I work with often are the same way. They get a lot of education. I have worked with a lot of doctors and psychologists and all kinds of professional status, and they're just like, something's wrong and I can't figure it out. And so what you do is you go back to school at 42 and you're like, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is what's going to make me feel good and feel complete. And so that people try all kinds of different things, or they can become very passionate about a certain subject. Like I have somebody who's a really high up in the dog training world. She's just very passionate about it. And I think what happens is that we keep searching and searching and searching and searching, and you can't find it. And so when I finally acknowledged my sexuality, that's my story. Your story, if you're a straight person, that might be it's a different story. But when I finally accepted the fact that I was not straight, and I acknowledged that I was, yes, indeed, queer and a lesbian, things got really hard for a while, and then they got better.
Can you talk about? Go ahead, Haley, go.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to ask the same question. When you face, like you mentioned, the restlessness and the seeking, but then you kind of accept that what you're seeking is you all along. And it is that acceptance of like, well, this is who I am. Did that feel very obvious to you? Like, obviously there's that point where you're just like, oh my God, this is going to be really hard. But once you settle into it, does it feel really obvious? And you're like, oh, I can see how that was all along. Well, or I was not accepting this part of me all along.
Well, what we talk about in our community is the recovered memory. A lot of times, not that it's, it's just like what happens is people put experiences into one basket and they realize that's actually another basket. I tell a story in my book about how the summer I was 14 and I had my first sexual experience with a girl and I kissed a boy that summer. And so my kissing of that boy was filed away as as a heteronormative little memory of the first boy I kissed when I was 14 years old. And the experimentation was filed away as shameful. And so
Mhm.
it wasn't until I came out and started on this journey. It wasn't until I came out, it's like, well, that's perfectly appropriate. This gay, But I had been raised like Brian and I both have been raised very Catholic. And man, like a lot of the work I do, the reason I work with women exclusively is because we have to unpack all the stuff that has been handed to
Mm,
us as women before I can even get to the sexuality
yeah.
piece for a lot of people. And so when I started all of this, it 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 was more of a daunt. Like I accepted, yes, I was gay. Yes. I had to like really it was I call it my fetal position phase because it was like 6 months in the fetal position trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do because I was married and I also did not like my ex-husband and I did the very usual thing of talking about threesome, talking about polyamory, and talking about an open relationship. And one of my values is monogamy. And I'm like, that's just not going to work for me. And he said that too. He's like, that's just not us. We've been monogamous for 27 years. We weren't good, just wasn't going to work. And I find in my community, a lot of people use that as a bargaining chip as
Mhm.
they are the end of their marriage. And so I knew I had to make a decision. And so what I did is I knew I had to let go. I had to let go of the life I had, some bits of, some parts of it, to be able to go and explore this new life. And so what I did is I listened to a meditation by this charming Australian man. I don't know who it was, it was a meditation about letting go. And I listened to it it was 45 minutes. I listened to it for every morning for a month. I literally would turn over in bed and just turn it on. Sometimes I would fall back to sleep. I mean, I just listened to it. And then at the end of about 35 days, I was able to like go, okay. And so I thought I was jumping off this enormous cliff, but actually it was 3 feet down.
Yeah.
And I was just terrified because heteronormativity was my comfort zone. I was very comfortable there. I was successful there. I mean, and so right outside of our comfort zones is the fear zone. So my fear got the best of me. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to survive without my ex-husband? How am I going to do this with my kids? Like I never even thought about meeting anybody. Like that was like so many of the women that I work with come out like want to meet their person. I never even thought about that. And as the universe have it happened, my person showed up right away. But it wasn't my goal. Like, in fact, when we first started dating, I said to her, maybe you should come back in a year because I've got a lot of stuff I have to go through and it's going to be hard. And it was. It was really, really hard. So I met my wife like literally like about a month after my ex-husband and I split up, and that was it. And she'd been out a long time too, so that was really super helpful because she knew the community.
Couple questions for you, Anne Marie. First of all, tell us the name of your book.
Authentic Peace. It is a play on the word peace, Piece, because
Right.
I was a missing piece, and then I really did find peace after I came out.
Yeah. And is it self-published or is it
Yes, it is. You can find it on Amazon. It's got
Amazon?
a lot of good reviews. So
Yeah. Tell the name again.
it's Authentic Peace, and I can
Okay.
send it to Haley.
We
Haley, so
can, yeah, we can
yeah.
pin it at the bottom of the video.
Mhm.
So Anne Marie, what is the oldest age of a person who has come to you looking for authenticity?
75.
75. Yep.
Yeah, I love my 70-year-olds, my 68 to 75 years old. I've had about 10 women
Mhm.
and they are on fire.
There, I will agree with you. I have clients. My oldest client was 97.
Oh my
Mhm.
goodness.
I have a nice chunk of clients that are in their 70s and 80s. and they are on fire. I mean, not only like do they not really look their age, but they're so energetic. And I think, when I look at it, I always say that it's so energetic because it's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like they've relaxed into life and they're just ready to say yes to anything, but as long as and like sort of what's coming towards them is aligned to that authentic energy.
Correct. And I think that they are on fire because they know that time is valuable.
Yeah.
And so my younger people mess around with a lot of things that the older people just don't, because they don't have time to waste. And if they're going to have this authenticity, they may only have 10, 15, 20, 30 years, 40 years left. Well, not somebody 75, but 25 left at the top. And they are going to live into it as quickly as possible. A lot of times they realize, like, oh, I'm gay. And it's within a year they have moved through all the stages that take some of my clients 2, 3, 4, 5 years to move in if they're younger.
I find that the older men who contact me, their one regret is not having a partner. Mm-hmm. And they look at my life with Ray, and there's admiration, but jealousy also, not wanting me not to have it, but wishing for themselves, that they had a Ray. And, it's hard to tell somebody, you're 80 years old. Well, you'll find somebody. How can I say that? Or I can't, nor can I say, it's okay to be single. Single people have, lots of good times. You sort of have to, be with the person where they are and not solve the problem from me, other than to have them recognized and heard. Does that resonate?
It does to some degree. But women coming out later in life are often different than men coming out later in life, because a lot of times men have been on the down low for a really long time. So what I mean by that is that a lot of men know they're gay and they get married and they have, they have sexual relationships with men outside their marriage, but it's just about sex, they think, and it takes them a long way. But for women, a lot of women come out later in life without having the experience with actually being with a woman. So I really want people to have that experience, because it often helps them confirm their belief about themselves, even though that's irrelevant, because, we don't tell, a straight person when they're in high school and they want to sleep with that boy, hey, you better go sleep with that boy to make sure you're straight. We don't tell, so for some of the women, but also women also like to partner. It's just really different, like the sense that, like, you can find, somebody in their 70s can definitely find somebody that will be willing to partner with them. Typically, they find people that have been out a long time that have lost their partner. Mm-hmm. I find that, I'll be really honest here. When people are in their 50s and 60s, sometimes that's easier to find a partner than somebody in their 40s. Because the people in the 50s and 60s have gotten divorced, they have had a partner die, and if they've had a successful long-term relationship, even if it ended in divorce, they are often looking to partner with somebody else. So I feel like women are more likely to search for a partner in their 50s and 60s and 70s than men may be.
Haley, I didn't mention in the beginning, but Anne Marie's ordained as a United Church of Christ minister. Mm-hmm. And when I think about where to send people, Anne Marie, it's not to a bar, it's to a dignity group or mm-hmm. one of the religious caucuses, mm-hmm. because they're going to meet people who share their values.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, the UCC is a wide denomination, so we do have open and affirming churches, but you have to sort of investigate each church before you go. You just never know. And I can read a website and tell you whether a church is queer friendly or not. Most people can't do that.
What is the link between, and speaking specifically for women, the link between religion and their coming out journey, or sort of that guidance, or that, that guidance that they're needing.
So women who come out later in life, I did an informal poll in one of my groups once, and I want to say that 80% of them come from some sort of conservative religious tradition, whether it is Christianity or Judaism. I've had a couple Muslim women as well. And so religion, especially conservative religion, my goodness, it does a number on women. And one of the things is that they have to, because they're told that they're responsible for their husband, 1,000%. They're responsible for their children. They're responsible for their church community. So everything, you are last on the spectrum of people that need to be cared for. And so unlearning all of those things and realizing that they are worthy of having love and worthy of being their most authentic self is a real unpacking of what they've been taught by their religious beliefs, their religious religion for years. And unfortunately, a lot of those women, especially those who come from very conservative churches, lose their community because their life has been built around their community. And so I give those women like props because that is incredibly hard. Some of them reject religion. They consider themselves atheists. They're done. They don't want to think about it anymore. And it's their journey. I understand. And then there's other people that deconstruct. They began to deconstruct their faith and, keeping the things that feel true to their values and discarding the things that just don't work anymore for them. And so deconstruction for some of the women is a really big part of their coming out journey. And that's why I call it a spiritual journey, because they are often deeply spiritual people. And as they begin to realize things about themselves, they are able to connect it to the divine. So I'll give an example for me. I was really stunned when this happened. So the first time I slept with somebody, I couldn't believe it. But in my head, all of a sudden, I thought, is this sinful? Now, biggest ally in the world, like didn't think, but this was about me and not about anybody out there. And I was like quickly said, no, it's not. But I was still stunned,
Yeah.
days later to think that I had thought that, it just it came out of nowhere. But it was that my religiosity was so ingrained in me, even though I had I don't believe in sin. I do believe in sin, but I believe that sin is what separates us from the divine. But I was just stunned that that even occurred to me, it took me a while to figure that to make my peace with that one.
I feel like that's part of the growth journey, is that you always have these moments where you're just like, where did that come from? And then it stays with you for days and you're just like, why is it still here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anne-Marie, how do people find you?
What do you mean by that? Oh, how do they find me?
Yeah. Do they find you happy or sad? No. How do they locate you?
Oh, I'm all over the place. But AnneMarieZanzel.com is my website. You can find me there. I am on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find me there. And YouTube. I have about 300 or 400 followers on YouTube. So you can find me there. So I'm all over the place. If you just Google my name, you can find me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
People are hungry for help. And so I was wondering how these women, knew about you, how they, because as we both know from self-publishing books, about 100 are sold, and then the book sits in the Amazon graveyard for the longest time.
Well, one of the things that I was very intentional about when I started this, I built my own website, my first one. Nobody was going to it. And so I hired somebody who was an SEO expert. And so Anna, who is actually, she's a lesbian. She's younger she's like 32. But she calls herself a post-Mormon. She went to Brigham Young University, almost got kicked out because her roommate saw her kissing a girl. And so she's done a lot of work with the Mormon community, especially all the hate that the Mormon church throws at the LGBTQ community. And so one of my goals was to be found organically, because most of the women that I work with Google in the middle of the night, can I be a lesbian and be married to a man?
Okay.
Can I be straight? Can I, signs that you're not straight, signs that you're a lesbian. We all joke about how many lesbian quizzes, people have taken, the sexuality quizzes. So my desire was to be found organically, because I know most of the women that I work with are Googling in the middle of the night because they can't sleep. And so one of the things I did is we did that. And so I have like 6 first page pages on Google. When you Google, am I straight? I pop up. My wife wrote an article, because there's a joke, Haley, I don't know if you know about this, but in the lesbian community, when you turn a woman, you get a toaster oven. It's from when Ellen came out. So when Ellen came out, there was the episode in which Laura Dern got a toaster oven because she turned Ellen. So my wife wrote an article called "What's Up with the Toaster Oven?" because my wife came out in 1985. And that's like, so if you Google "What's up with the toaster oven,"
You come up.
that comes up as the number one article. So I have about 6 or 7 that are number one, and that's how most people find me.
In your experience, how important is humor? Because we're talking about really serious things here. We're talking about people's lives. How important is humor?
Oh, so important. We have a lot of laughs in the work we do. I work with another coach, Barb Rollinson, who is, I hired her and we work together and it's been wonderful. First of all, when you've been working alone for a long time, it's so nice to have someone to work with. So Barb and I hired Barb in 2021, and then she's basically moved up to being a coach. She's amazing. We have so many laughs about this experience. So I've been running a workshop all week, and I asked a question, and I said, well, you get a gold star. And so I said, okay, LGBTQ learning here. What's a gold star lesbian? And one of them answered, and I said, well, you get another gold star. And we were laughing. So a gold star lesbian is a lesbian who hasn't slept with a man. And so we use humor around things that are funny, because there's so many things about this journey that's hysterical and funny, and we laugh about it all the time, because if you don't, you could spend a lot of time crying. So I believe humor is incredibly important. Mm-hmm.
If a man contacts you, Anne Marie, you don't take him as a client.
Well, actually, Brian, I am going to start doing it, because I have not done it at all, because gay male culture is very different than lesbian culture. And I just don't have the experience. So I would refer them to a friend of mine. His name is Rick Clemens, and he works with men coming out later in life. He has the podcast. I can't remember the name right now, but Rick does that work. So I would just naturally refer them out, but I've been thinking, a lot of the work I do is around divorce too. And so I can definitely do that work with people, with men. But I just asked my wife's cousin, Mark, who is this fabulous gay man from Hollywood, and he's been in AA culture a long time, and we're just really good friends. And I said, Mark, if I started a support group for men coming out later in life, I need a man there to run it with me. Would you be interested? And he said yes. And I was like, yay. So probably not this year. I've got too many other things on my plate this year, but I'm going to try to work for it in the January, like in 2025. I just am too busy right now to start something like that. It takes a lot of work, because I have to start writing about men now too, and men coming out later in life, if they're going to find me organically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions, I think. When somebody is a woman specifically is Googling, and regardless of their age, is Googling sort of at night, like maybe I'm gay, or I haven't found anybody, or I can't connect with men, is that a sign that they actually are lesbian? Or is that, like, how much questioning is you're still straight versus you're actually lesbian?
Well,
How do you how would you guide somebody through that who's afraid of coming out, but they're
Well,
asking all the time?
well, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to Google those things. Um, we have a saying in the later in life community that straight girls don't lay awake at night wondering if they're gay. And I've had some very smart clients that went and like polled all their straight friends and said, do you think about, so like for me, when someone said that to me, that was revolutionary because I thought everybody laid awake at night wondering if they're gay. And no, it doesn't mean anything. So what I'm going to say to you, like if you're Googling whether you're a lesbian or not, or Googling with whether you're, I don't use lesbian either for people just coming out. This is how I approach it. I said, I possibly may not be straight because lesbian is a very loaded term.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Yeah.
younger women, because it has been a stigmatized word like the N word in the Black community. And so a lot of times, or the F word, that's like a word we don't use for gay men, And so a lot of times, especially younger women, they call it women loving women, WLW. A lot of women say they're bisexual. But I think there's some really complicated reasons there. And I always say to my folks, the only person that can name your sexuality is you. I can't name your sexuality. I have clients that consider themselves bisexual because they're new to this journey. I know damn well that they're not bisexual. I know they're lesbian, but I'm not going to say that. That's not my
Mm-hmm.
role. My role is to give them guidance, and the only person that can name your sexuality is you, nobody else. And I learned that from my own personal experience because I went to several therapists after the other saying, hey, I think I'm gay. They were totally useless. And they, like, one said, have you ever slept with a woman? I said no, and she never talked about it again. And I said, well, I guess I haven't passed the test, you know. And then my lesbian therapist with my ex-husband, when we were a couples therapy, I said, I think sometimes I might be gay, and she just totally ignored it. She was older too, so I think her framework was a little bit different. And she just chalked it up with like the challenging relationship I had with my mother. So insert eye roll here. And so people like, so what I learned is that no one's going to name my sexuality for me.
Mm-hmm.
The only person that's going to do it is me.
Yeah.
And chances are, if you're Googling stuff in the middle of the night, you are definitely questioning, and it's okay to question. It is, we should tell everybody in the world, question this,
Question.
question this.
It's
Because it's like when my son went to college, he's 20, 21, I said, please go and explore. Just go and explore. Sleep with men, sleep with women, figure out what you want. I mean, what you want. I don't know if he's done any of that, but I know my daughters did. And they're both with men, but they did go and explore when they were in college. And so I'm like, please explore this. This is when we're teenagers and
we
20s.
should ask questions.
Go explore. Go figure it out. I find that the Gen Zs are so amazing because they're 30% identifies 30% LGBTQ. And I think they're amazing because they are exploring it and
Yeah.
they're thinking about gender, they're thinking about sexual orientation. So that's a
Who did you,
long-winded answer to your question, Haley.
who did you say you admired the 30%?
The Gen Zs, yeah, the youngest, the
Oh,
kids
okay.
between like,
I
yeah,
get it. I thought
millennials
it,
are
Well, they're like
younger.
below the millennials, right?
The generation after the millennials.
Yeah,
So
younger.
yeah,
the
I thought it
oldest
was some,
Gen
I thought it
Z,
was some country.
no, the oldest Gen Zs are born in 1996, 97, and I think it's like 2016. So it's like a
Okay.
20 thing. So
Yeah.
those are Gen Zs.
Uh, I want to ask a question about sex.
So do I.
Haley loves those questions. Anne-Marie, when somebody contacts you and they're questioning their sexuality, do you also get questions about, well, what do I do? I mean, I don't know what to do when I get in bed. is there a lesbian map that you can give me? You know?
Well, um, we actually in my Facebook groups every 4 months that comes up, somebody will ask the question like, I'm really like, I'm meeting this woman this weekend. I think this is going to happen. I've never slept with a woman. What do I do? Right. And so for me, that was something I was never nervous about. And everybody's different. I mean, sex is sex. I was going to figure it out. And luckily, we all have the same parts. So I could figure that out. But yes, people are really nervous about sex and they do ask about sexual questions. Sometimes we really have very frank discussions about things, um, when people go on the dating apps, sometimes people have like in the heteronormative world, you would never ever think to ask that question, but in the queer world, you might ask a question, like for example, regarding penetration or something like that, which you would never ask in the straight world. But in the queer world, it's definitely a question you ask because some people like it, some people don't. So and getting people used to those questions so that they're not like horribly offended when it happens, you know,
It- uh,
because it's just a normal question in the queer
Mm.
world.
there's a difference also between uh, men and women with regard to orgasm.
Hmm.
It's quite clear to a man that he's aroused, and it's quite clear to him that he's at least ejaculated, if not having an orgasm. They're not the same, as you know. Orgasm is cerebral.
Hmm.
Uh, Women, on the other hand, don't have uh, anything that rises to the occasion. They basically touch. They can touch, and then you have some who are very genital oriented. And I think it's easier for a woman to say that she's lesbian than it is for a man to say that he's gay. And I think there are more women who say they're bisexual than there are men who say they're bisexual. I think there's a study on that, because sexuality can mean different things to people, and men are really locked into that erection and ejaculation.
Well, I have a lot to say about that.
Good.
You got 15 minutes.
Okay. So being queer to me is how I want to be in relationship with somebody emotionally, physically, sexually, and emotionally, physically, spiritually, and intellectually. Sex is just a very tiny part of that. It's not the whole ball of wax. Um, I think there are more women that identify as bisexual for a host of reasons, including the fact that we tell women that relationships are difficult with men. We tell women that they need to be married to a man and they need to have children. And so a lot of times women identify as bisexual because at least they still have a man in their life or the potential for the man in their life.
It's just
Women,
a phase.
yeah, it's just a phase. A lot of women get that. Some boys get told that too, but we also teach boys to listen to their voices. So what I think maybe you might be missing, Brian, is that there's a whole host of patriarchal reasons why women may figure it out later than men, and that like men often don't know how to have sex with a woman because it is about the man's pleasure
Mhm.
and it is not about the woman's pleasure. That's why women who sleep with women like love it so much more than sleeping with men, because men really sort of suck in bed for women. It's not all, I'm not saying all, because it is exactly about what you said. It is about the ejaculation and about orgasm for men. And once the man has that in the heteronormative relationship, then the woman better hurry up and finish off. And there are men that are very attentive to their partners and are wonderful lovers, but women tend to be much more attentive lovers than men. They are, and
Mhm.
men are. And so they are also like I think women identify as bisexual because we don't give space for women to be gay. Like to
Mhm.
say you're a lesbian is you are stepping
Yeah.
outside the norm. And it is you are abandoning all your privilege, because if you're bisexual, you still and if you're a bisexual woman, and bi visibility is real in our community, and if you're a bisexual woman who's with a man, it's really hard to be seen as queer, but they will still be with women, but they happen to be married to a man.
I think from my experience as a woman and having, first of all, just seeing this through my woman's eyes, I see gay, not talking about the difficulty of the journey, but gay men are have more fun out and about, and they're freer in their social settings. Lesbian women stick together. It's very hard to penetrate a lesbian group as a straight woman. And for me, my conversations with other lesbian women, it's just because the trust isn't there. It's
Well, because there's a bunch of things going on here too. Gay men have more money.
mm-hmm.
They just do. That's the reality of it.
It's
They make
yeah.
more money, and so they have a lot more disposable income than lesbians do. There are lesbians that are at the top tier that are making tons of money, but a lot of lesbians are two women trying to survive
Mm-hmm.
financially, so they don't have the money to go out and party like guys do. They just simply don't. Often many lesbian couples, especially younger ones now, have children. They just like there's a really funny SNL skit where they're on like the women are on Cherry Island and the guys are on Fire Island, and you can hear the guys having a really great time and the women are all home with their kids yelling out the window, be quiet over there. So lesbian women are like, they just have different responsibilities. A lot of them become moms too. So when you're raising children, your friends end up being straight women, you know, but also too, like being a straight girl in a lesbian group, there is suspicion because they're wondering if you are gay and just haven't figured it out yet. Two, a lot of times lesbian women have started relationships with women who have identified as straight, and it blows up and it's horribly painful because they are, they've fallen in love with a woman who's straight, and then she rejects her because she's a lesbian, and she can't, the other woman, the woman that is rejecting, just does, it's not for her. She just doesn't want to do that. And so also too, like gay men and straight women have the same thing, same interest, like you both like men. And so, like gay men really, you guys have a lot more in common to be able, that's why straight women and gay men, I think, they're so compatible because you have the same interests. You all like men. And so that's why I find that gay men are very welcoming to straight women in their groups.
Anne Marie, that's not what we have in common. No, you'll never hear gay men and women talk about men. We talk about fashion, we talk about food, we talk about decorating, we talk
about other women.
Yeah, and straight women love gay men because we look in their eyes, we don't look at their breasts when we're talking to them. And
Yeah.
we compliment their hair, we compliment their outfits. I'm in the Publix, which is our grocery store. I'm constantly saying to women, "Oh, I love that outfit. It's great on you." A straight man will not say such a thing.
No, and that's of course. So like women like to be validated. So the gay guys do a good job validating the straight women. Like I really think we could be really like have a great business where you teach straight men how to treat a woman right.
Oh God.
And lesbians
hope for that day. We all hope for that day.
lesbians do classes about how to make your wife come. Yeah. We got to take that out, Haley.
No, you don't.
I mean, honestly, it's a really great point because I have some wonderful lesbian friends here. One of them is bisexual, and she started her first relationship with a woman about a year ago. And sort of one dinner that we have, the three of us have together, I'm straight. She at that point was straight too, and there was one lesbian in the group, and now she now identifies as lesbian. There's me and two lesbians. We had one dinner where it was, okay, there's two straight people and one lesbian at the table. The next dinner, I'm bi, there's a bi, a lesbian, and a straight person. The next dinner, two lesbians and a straight.
Mm-hmm.
And the most sort of that first transition of her journey going from straight to bi to lesbian, a lot of conversations about sex and the woman's body, and the very obvious, like, I've been with a guy, I've never been with a girl, what do I do? And having those conversations, and me as a straight person being, not to blow my own horn, I do have an open mind, so I'm completely comfortable in these kind of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Eye-opening, but at the same time, just being able to bond as women and have this opportunity to just be able to be like, that totally makes sense. And so similarities that we were talking about, and we're like, that's amazing. Like, lesbian sex, don't have to worry about pregnancy. Don't have to worry about STDs. Don't have to worry about.
You don't have to worry about STDs with lesbian sex. You do have to think about that. But
you don't have to worry about the cleanup afterwards. You can stay and cuddle.
Yes, that's actually a wonderful thing. And also too, like, I always joke, I said, if I came out in my 20s, I would have been a hoe, because I couldn't get, like one of my biggest concerns when I was in my 20s and a straight girl was getting pregnant. Like, I did not want to get pregnant.
It's huge.
So it really cuts down on the way you can explore and stuff like that. I mean, yes, you can be on birth control and everything like that, but there's always that little nagging thing.
There's always in the back of your head going like, did it work?
Yeah. And while lesbian women don't have to do that, like, they don't have to think about things like that. A lot of times there's like, they get very angry at doctors when they insist on giving them a pregnancy test. And they're like, I just sleep with women. You don't need to give me a pregnancy test. But, they don't believe them, because we don't believe women too.
But the subject of men needing to learn how to please women, Haley and Ray and I laugh. All these TV series set in Viking times or whatever, the first thing the man does is cunnilingus, and we think, wait a second. Men have no interest in pleasing women in general. Their first thought is, you please me. And again, generalities, but to say that hundreds of years ago the first thing that a man would do was cunnilingus is kind of silly.
Well, who knows?
I know we could continue, folks, but we've got literally 5 minutes. So I hate to be short, but I wanted to sort of touch with Anne-Marie back as we're ending this conversation, possibly starting another conversation later on. Where are you today with your journey and where your learning is sort of seems to be going?
Mm-hmm. So for me, I will always love my later in life community, but I have sort of grown beyond some of the things that are the concerns. And so I will always, either myself or Barb will always be part of that community to be able to take care of them. But I really want to start working with other queer women. And I have a business partner with that, Anna, who did my website, in which we call it purposeful empowerment, because what we want to do is empower queer women to create the most fulfilling and joyful lives they can. And so that is where I'm headed. And I've been heading there for a while, and finally it's coming together. So our first product out is we have a relationship course for lesbian couples specifically that has been developed by a psychologist named Dr. Robin Saison. And so we're going to be marketing that course for her and running some Facebook groups. Anna and I both identify as lesbians. We're both married. So we're going to be doing those courses for her. So I am just what I have realized is that the queer community has been an underserviced community regarding so many different things. And, like when Anna first did my website back in 2019, she was like looking for coming out coaches. There were none. And now there's tons of them.
And
But I was sort of the first person to say, wait a minute, this is really hard. This is really hard to come out at 30, 40, and 50 after you've been married with children and everything like that. We need like information about it. There was no information. There was one Facebook group when I Googled in 2016 and one article, and that was it. And so what has happened is there's been an explosion in which people are not ashamed that they've come out later in life anymore. And as a member of lesbian groups like on Facebook and stuff, from when I came out 8 years ago, and women still being very suspicious of women coming out later in life, that's sort of dissipating. Now they're like, oh, everybody's on their own journey. Some people come to this later. And most like longtime out lesbians will not want to date you when you're first coming out because you're going through a lot. Like I personally wouldn't date somebody just coming out, if I was single, but they will be your friend and they will guide you, and they will, be your wing person when you're going out on your first lesbian bar or something like that. But what I have seen, and because people were so ashamed that they were late to the party, I'm like, okay, we've dealt with enough shame. Let's, I just came to the party late, no big deal, but I figured it out.
yeah.
So one of my life's goals is to get rid of shame around queerness, because there should be shame.
I know we have a little bit of time, but would you work with a transsexual lesbian?
Transgender women, yes. I have actually worked with several transgender women, and I've also worked with several women that have come out later in life and have transitioned to being men. So because for some people, because the way our society works, people often, when they're becoming members of the LGBTQ community, often start with sexuality, which is who you sleep with, while gender is who you are. So they start with sexuality, and then they realize, wait a minute, this isn't about sexuality. Yeah, right now I have 2 women in my group. I have about 30 women in my group right now that are my like coaching clients. 2 of them are questioning their gender. They're realizing they're non-binary. I don't think either one of them, I don't know what will happen actually. It's, I don't know. So yes, I've had several several people transition.
I hope you've had fun in this hour talking about these issues. I've had fun. Haley?
I've talked way more about sex on this one than I
honestly,
I go straight to sex because I'm, certified sexuality educator. So my peer group talks about, all of these sexual things, and it's not scary or funny, or, it's just normal, and I find at dinner parties, when Ray and I start bringing up sexual things, our male friends look back and forth thinking, we've never been asked that question, but it's great to be asked it,
And I think, from my perspective, the dinner that I told you about, where it was our normal girl group just having this wonderful conversation about, for me, it was about being woman and finding that similarity in like these things. And yes, it was a conversation about bodies and body parts and sex, but it was such a fun conversation of bonding. And I would hope, if people listen to this and take anything away, it takes some of the fear away, because there is a lot of fear with those kind of conversations. And, from a straight person, sometimes we do feel uncomfortable when gay sex comes up because we don't know anything about it. And I would hope that in these conversations, people can see, like, through our experiences and sort of our perspectives, be able to kind of sit back and be like, this could be a fun conversation. This could be a giggle conversation. It doesn't have to be serious.
Or I could learn something from this.
Yeah. We're all supposed to be having fun here, people, but fun in a very gentle, loving way.
Well, I really appreciate, Haley, that you were able to sit with that conversation and just have fun with it.
It was so much fun. I can't tell you how my heart opened to that.
I'm curious. I know we're running over, but I'm curious, like, could you have that same conversation with your straight friends?
We do have that same conversation, but I find that conversation very quickly ends up being about men bashing.
I was going to say bitching, because in my life, that's like, you couldn't have those conversations because it would quickly go to like talking about what's wrong with
Yeah.
your husband or your boyfriend or something like that. You can't,
Yeah.
it's not the same. Yeah.
And I think, you know, as we're ending this conversation and coming back to the root point of this, which is the humanity, if we just allow ourselves to be open-minded and sit with the humanity of each one of us, oh my God, what much fun we might have.
Might be fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Thank you always, Brian. Lots of
I
love.
love you, Derek.
Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Bye.